Okay, today is the 15th of September 2009, and this is the last talk for the Vasa this year. This talk, the sutta they're going to discuss tonight is a very interesting sutta. Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 13, Maha Dukkha Kanda Sutta, the greater discourse on the mass of suffering. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Then, when it was morning, a number of monks dressed and taking the bowls and outer robes went into Savatthi for alms. Then they thought, it is still too early to wander for alms in Savatthi. Suppose we went to the park of the wanderers of other sects. So they went to the park of the wanderers of other sects and exchanged greetings with the wanderers. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, they sat down at one side. The wanderers said to them, Friends, the recluse Gotama describes the full understanding of sensual pleasures, and we do so too. The recluse Gotama describes the full understanding of material form, and we do so too. The recluse Gotama describes the full understanding of feelings, and we do so too. What then is the distinction here, friends? What is the variance? What is the difference between the recluse Gotama's teaching of the Dhamma and ours, between his instructions and ours? Then those monks neither approved nor disapproved of the wanderer's words. Without doing either, they rose from their seats and went away, thinking, we shall come to understand the meaning of these words in the Blessed One's presence. When they had wandered for alms in Savatthi and had returned from their alms round, after the meal they went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, they sat down at one side and told him what had taken place. The Blessed One said, Monks, wanderers of other sects who speak thus should be questioned thus. But friends, what is the gratification, what is the danger, and what is the escape in the case of sensual pleasures? What is the gratification, what is the danger, and what is the escape in the case of material form or body? What is the gratification, what is the danger, and what is the escape in the case of feelings? Being questioned thus, wanderers of other sects will fail to account for the matter, and what is more, they will get into difficulties. Why is that? Because it is not their province. Monks, I see no one in the world with its gods, its maras and its brahmas, in this generation with its recluses and brahmins, with its princes and its people, who could satisfy the mind with a reply to these questions, except for the Tathagata or his disciple, or one who has learned it from them. And what, monks, is the gratification in the case of sensual pleasures? Monks, there are these 5 chords of sensual pleasure. What are the 5? Forms cognizable by the eye that are wished for, desired, agreeable and likable, connected with sensual desire and provocative of lust. Sounds cognizable by the ear, odors cognizable by the nose, flavors cognizable by the tongue, tangibles cognizable by the body, that are wished for, desired, agreeable and likable, connected with sensual desire and provocative of lust. These are the 5 causes of sensual pleasure. Now the pleasure and joy that arise dependent on these 5 causes of sensual pleasure are the gratification in the case of sensual pleasures. Stop here for a moment. So the gratification or satisfaction of sensual pleasures is the pleasure and joy that arises from enjoying these 5 causes of sensual pleasure, namely forms, sounds, odors, flavors, tangibles. And what, monks, is the danger in the case of sensual pleasures? Here, monks, on account of the craft by which a clansman makes a living, whether checking or accounting or calculating or farming or trading or husbandry or archery or the royal service, or whatever craft it may be, he has to face cold, he has to face heat, he is injured with by contact with gadflies, mosquitoes, wind, sun and creeping things. He risks death by hunger and thirst, Now this is a danger in the case of sensual pleasures. A mass of suffering visible here and now, having sensual pleasures as its cause, sensual pleasures as its source, sensual pleasures as its basis, the cause being simply sensual pleasure. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, because of sensual pleasures, everybody wants sensual pleasures to have a good life. So we have to make a living. Whether you make a living by accounting or farming or soldier or whatever it is, you have to face cold, heat, mosquitoes, snakes, and risk your life. So there's a danger of sensual pleasures. If no property comes to the clansman while he works and strives and makes an effort, thus he sorrows, grieves, and laments. He weeps, beating his breast, and becomes distraught, crying, "My work is in vain, my effort is fruitless." Now this too is a danger in the case of sensual pleasures. I'll stop here for a moment. This is, for example, in those days of the Buddha, farmers, they work on the fields, and then because of drought, no rain, and the whole crop, all the crops are wiped out. Or if there's a flood, excessive rain, all the crops are wiped out. So they will suffer, they grieve. Nowadays, it will be like a businessman, invest a lot of money, and then because of recession, all your business goes bankrupt, and you also will sorrow and grieve. If no property comes to the clansman while he works and strives and makes an effort thus, he experiences pain and grief in protecting it. How shall neither kings nor thieves make off with my property, nor fire burn it, nor water sweep it away, nor hateful airs make off with it? And as he guards and protects his property, kings or thieves make off with it, or fire burns it, or water sweeps it away, or hateful airs make off with it. And he sorrows, grieves, and laments. He weeps, beating his breast, and becomes distraught, crying, "What I had, I have no longer." Now this too is a danger in the case of sensual pleasures, the cause being simply sensual pleasures. Stop here for a moment. So if a man, he works, and then he acquires wealth, he acquires property, he has to worry about it, whether bandits or robbers will come and rob him. Or in those days, kings were very powerful. They can simply seize your property. Or maybe, like in certain places, they have warlords. Then they simply just take what they want. Or even ordinary things like fire may burn your property, or flood, and hateful heirs, relatives also try to steal your property. And if they do, then you will grieve also. Again, with sensual pleasures as the cause, sensual pleasures as the source, sensual pleasures as the basis, the cause being simply sensual pleasures. Kings quarrel with kings, nobles with nobles, Brahmins with Brahmins, householders with householders, mother quarrels with child, child with mother, father with child, child with father, brother quarrels with brother, sister with sister, sister with brother, friend with friend. And here in the quarrels, brawls and disputes, they attack each other with fists, clods, sticks or knives, whereby they incur death or deadly suffering. Now this too is a danger in the case of sensual pleasures, the cause being simply sensual pleasures. So stop here for a moment. So here also, because of wealth, because of property division, because of jealousy, because of covetousness, people quarrel each other, and relatives also quarrel each other. In those days, if things cannot be settled, then they come to blows and take knives and all that. But nowadays they go to court. See you in court, they say. Again, with sensual pleasures as the cause, men take swords and shields and buckle on bows and quivers, and they charge into battle massed in double array, with arrows and spears flying and swords flashing. And there they are wounded by arrows and spears, and the heads are cut off by swords, whereby they incur death or deadly suffering. Now this too is a danger in the case of sensual pleasures, the cause being simply sensual pleasures. So again, for the same reason, jealousy and covetousness and all this, and then men fight with each other. Again, with sensual pleasures as the cause, men take swords and shields and buckle on bows and quivers, and they charge slippery bastions with arrows and spears flying and swords flashing, and there they are wounded by arrows and spears and splashed with boiling liquids and crushed under heavy weights, and their heads are cut off by swords, whereby they incur death or deadly suffering. Now this too is a danger in the case of sensual pleasures, the cause being simply sensual pleasures. This is referring to war and all that, because of greed, because of wanting material things. Men fight with each other. Sometimes people, because their race is different, they fight. Sometimes because religion is different, they fight. Sometimes because the nation is different, they fight. Again, with sensual pleasures as the cause, men break into houses, plunder wealth, commit burglary, ambush highways, seduce others' wives, and when they are caught, kings have many kinds of torture inflicted on them. The kings have them flogged with whips, beaten with canes, beaten with clubs. They have their hands cut off, their feet cut off, their hands and feet cut off, their ears cut off, their noses cut off, their ears and noses cut off. They have them subjected to the polished pot, that means they are cooked in the pot, to the polished shell shave, to the rahu's mouth, to the fiery reed, to the flaming hand, to the blades of grass, to the bark dress, to the antelope, to the meat hooks, probably they are hung up like the chicken or the duck, to the coins, to the lie pickling, to the pivoting pin, to the rolled up lace, and they have them splashed with boiling oil, and they have them thrown to be devoured by dogs, and they have them impaled alive on stakes, and they have their heads cut off with swords, whereby they incur death or deadly suffering. Now this too is a danger in the case of sensual pleasures, the cause being simply sensual pleasures. Here it refers to people who break the precepts, they steal or they seduce others' wives, and they do other things that break the law, and because of that they are caught by the kings, by the soldiers, and they are subjected to all kinds of torture. In the Buddha's days, the king was all powerful, can torture you any way they like. There's one sutta where the king wanted to see whether a man has a soul. Then when they have some criminal that is caught and supposed to be killed, the king asked the soldiers to cut off his skin bit by bit to see whether the soul comes out of the body. And then they found they didn't see any soul. Then next time they caught another criminal, then they put him in a pot, close the pot and boil the water, and then see whether anything come out. So all kinds of ways they can do as the king likes in those days. They can cut off your flesh bit by bit, all that. So that is what happens when people break the law and they are caught. Again, with sensual pleasures as the cause, sensual pleasures as the source, sensual pleasures as the basis, the cause being simply sensual pleasures. People indulge in misconduct of body, speech and mind. Having done so, on the dissolution of the body after death, they reappear in states of deprivation, in an unhappy destination, in perdition, even in hell. Now this too is a danger in the case of sensual pleasures, a means of suffering in the life to come. Having sensual pleasures as its cause, sensual pleasures as its source, sensual pleasures as its basis, the cause being simply sensual pleasures. So here, because of wanting to enjoy ourselves, we go to various extents and we break the precepts, we misconduct ourselves in body, speech and mind, create bad karma to these three ways, and then after that we end up in the woeful plains of existence and suffer for a long time. And what mounts is the escape in the case of sensual pleasures. It is a removal of desire and lust, the abandonment of desire and lust for sensual pleasures. This is the escape in the case of sensual pleasures. That those recluses and Brahmins who do not understand as it actually is, the gratification as gratification, the danger as danger, and the escape as escape in the case of sensual pleasures, can either themselves fully understand sensual pleasures or instruct another so that he can fully understand sensual pleasures. That is impossible. That those recluses and Brahmins who understand as it actually is, the gratification as gratification, the danger as danger, and the escape as escape in the case of sensual pleasures, can either themselves fully understand sensual pleasures or instruct another so that he can fully understand sensual pleasures. That is possible. And just stop here for a moment to quote a simile given in another sutta. This is very interesting simile given by the Buddha, I think in the Magandhya Sutta. We will come across later in the book. In this sutta, the Buddha gave a simile for sensual pleasures, saying that people indulge in sensual pleasures to enjoy the 5 causes of sensual pleasure, to forms, sounds, smells, taste and touch. And the Buddha said, people who do this, sometimes people, the sensual desires are very strong. They go to extreme extent to satisfy the sensual pleasures. And the Buddha gave a simile of a leper. The Buddha says, a leper, the flesh is all rotting and it's very itchy. And so the Buddha said, this leper, because the skin is all eaten by all these worms or bacteria, whatever, so he has so much itch, he has to scratch, and keep scratching and keep scratching, and he scratches to ease the itch, but each time he scratches, the blood comes out. The more he scratches, more blood comes out. Then it turns to pus, and then becomes very foul smelling. But then the skin is so rotten that even scratching cannot satisfy that itch. So what does he do? He cannot stand. He go and find some burning ember, a coal. He go and burn the flesh, and then only he can sigh. Can ease the itch. But then as he does this, then the flesh becomes more rotten because it's burned, and then more pus and more foul smelling. But he continues to do this, he has no choice. So the more he does it, the more, the worse the body becomes. More pus, more blood comes out, and more bad smelling and all that. But he has to continue doing it. So the Buddha said, if an ordinary person without leprosy, suppose we were to do the same thing to that person and scratch until his blood comes up, how would he feel? Pain, isn't it? Or take a burning ember and burn him, he feel pain. Then why does not this leper feel pain? Because he's sick, the Buddha says, because he's sick. So because he's a sick person, the skin is different from an ordinary person's skin. So his skin is like deadened like that. He scratch, also he does not feel the pain. The only thing in his mind is that itch, the itch which he needs to satisfy, like a drug addict like that. So this makes us realize actually this sensual desire is a sickness like that. It's just an itch we need to satisfy. Now we come to material form or body. And what mounts is the gratification in the case of material form. Suppose there were a girl of the noble class, or the Brahmin class, or of householder stock, in her 15th or 16th year, neither too tall nor too short, neither too thin nor too fat, neither too dark nor too fair. Is her beauty and loveliness then at its height? Yes, noble sir. Now the pleasure and joy that arise in dependence on that beauty and loveliness are the gratification in the case of material form. Now stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says the gratification or satisfaction in the case of material form or body This must be Rupa, body. Is a young girl at her height of her beauty, when she's about 15 or 16 years old. So when you see a beautiful girl like that, the pleasure and joy that arise because of that is the gratification in the case of material form. Like nowadays, will be people seeing the Miss Universe contest, seeing all the beautiful girls. And what monks is the danger in the case of material form. Later on, one might see that same woman here at 80, 90 or 100 years old, aged, as crooked as a roof bracket, doubled up, supported by a walking stick, tottering, frail, her youth gone, her teeth broken, grey hair, scanty hair, bald, wrinkled, with limbs all blotchy. What do you think, monks? Has her former beauty and loveliness vanished, and the danger become evident? Yes, noble sir. Monks, this is a danger in the case of material form or body. Stop here for a moment. So you imagine a beautiful girl you saw at 16 years old, and 70 or 80 years later, you look at her, she's become an old woman, almost bald already, no teeth, and the hair and a lot of it dropped off, and skin all wrinkled, and every step that she takes also with effort and hunchback. So that beautiful young girl has become this ugly old lady. That's the same person. Again, one might see that same woman afflicted, suffering, and gravely ill, lying foul in her own excrement and urine, lifted up by some and set down by others. What do you think, monks? Has her former beauty and loveliness vanished, and the danger become evident? Yes, noble sir. Monks, this too is a danger in the case of material form. So even if that woman does not grow old, sometimes she might get sick with cancer or any serious sickness, and you see her, even though she's young, but she's lying on the bed, cannot move on her own, and sleeping on her own urine and excrement. Other people have to feed her, clean her, and all this thing, and all her beauty and all gone. Years ago, when I was new to Buddhism, we had one of our lady Buddhist friends. She had sickness in I think the kidney or urine, this liver was having problem. So few of our Buddhist friends went to the hospital to donate blood for her. Then I saw her all yellow and so thin. So I had to change the blood. So the beautiful girl suddenly, with the onset of sickness, can become ugly. Again, one might see that same woman as a corpse thrown aside in a charnel ground, 1, 2, or 3 days dead, bloated, livid, and oozing matter. What do you think, monks? Has her former beauty and loveliness vanished, and the danger become evident? Yes, my good sir. Monks, this too is a danger in the case of material form. So that beautiful girl, one day she suddenly dies, and then after 3 days she turns into a corpse, bloated and smelly and blue-black, and liquid oozing from the 9 holes. Then that beautiful girl, Miss Universe, has become Miss Corpse. Again, one might see that same woman as a corpse thrown aside in the charnel ground, being devoured by crows, hawks, vultures, dogs, jackals, all various kinds of worms. And later it becomes a skeleton with flesh and blood, held together with sinews. And later a fleshless skeleton smeared with blood, held together with sinews. And later disconnected bones scattered in all directions. Here a hand bone, there a foot bone, here a thigh bone, there a rib bone, here a hip bone, there a backbone, here the skull. and later it becomes bones bleached white, the color of shells, and later bones heaped up more than a year old, and later bones rotted and crumbled to dust. What do you think, monks? Has her former beauty and loveliness vanished, and the danger become evident? Yes, my good sir. Monks, this too is a danger in the case of material form or body. And what, monks, is the escape in the case of material form? It is a removal of desire and lust, the abandonment of desire and lust for material form. This is the escape in the case of material form. That those recluses and Brahmins who do not understand as it actually is, the gratification as gratification, the danger as danger, and the escape as escape in the case of material form, can either themselves fully understand material form or instruct another so that he can fully understand material form. That is impossible. That those recluses and Brahmins who understand as it actually is, the gratification as gratification, the danger as danger, and the escape as escape in the case of material form, can either themselves fully understand material form or instruct another so that he can fully understand material form. That is possible. Now we come to feelings. And what, monks, is the gratification in the case of feelings? Here, monks, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, a monk enters upon and abides in the first jhana. This is accompanied by thought directed and sustained, with delight and pleasure born of seclusion. On such an occasion, he does not choose for his own affliction, or for another's affliction, or for the affliction of both. On that occasion, he feels only feeling that is free from affliction. The highest gratification in the case of feelings is freedom from affliction, I say. Again, with the stilling of thought directed and sustained, a monk enters upon and abides in the second jhana, and with the fading away as well of delight, he enters upon and abides in the third jhana. Then with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, he enters upon and abides in the fourth jhana. On such an occasion, he does not choose for his own affliction, or for another's affliction, or for the affliction of both. On that occasion, he feels only feeling that is free from affliction. The highest gratification in the case of feelings is freedom from affliction, I say. So here the sutta is saying that the gratification in the case of feelings, the highest satisfaction is abiding in jhana. When you are in jhana, that's the most pleasurable feeling. And what, monks, is the danger in the case of feelings? Feelings are impermanent, suffering, and subject to change. This is the danger in the case of feelings. In other words, even the jhanas are impermanent, even the heavens are impermanent. And what, monks, is the escape in the case of feelings? It is a removal of desire and lust, the abandonment of desire and lust for feelings. This is the escape in the case of feelings. That those recluses and Brahmins who do not understand as it actually is, the gratification as gratification, the danger as danger, and the escape as escape in the case of feelings, can either themselves fully understand feelings or instruct another so that he can fully understand feelings. That is impossible. That those recluses and Brahmins who understand as it actually is, the gratification as gratification, the danger as danger, and the escape as escape in the case of feelings, can either themselves fully understand feelings or instruct another so that he can fully understand feelings. That is possible. That is what the Blessed One said. The monks were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. So this sutta is the way the Buddha explained is very striking, especially in the first case, the danger of sensual pleasures, that worldly people, because of everybody wanting a good life, we compete with each other, we quarrel, we fight with each other, and even to the extent of killing each other, or because of I and mine, we want to protect our interests. And then the case of body, the danger of body is the example the Buddha gives is so striking. Beautiful girl, 16 years old, one day, another day you see her when she's 80 or 90 years old, totally different, from beautiful to ugly. And then, or she's sick, afflicted with a severe illness, and lying on her own urine and excrement, then also all the loveliness has vanished. Or she has become a corpse suddenly one day. So then all that. So from these examples you can see that life is impermanent. So whatever beauty any one of us have is only fleeting. Only when we are young we look beautiful or handsome. As we grow older we become more and more ugly. So not many people have the wisdom like the Buddha. The Buddha said when he was young, he thought to himself, now I'm young. What is there to be proud of being young? He said, one day I have to grow old just like other people. Then he thought, now I have health, I'm young, I have health. What's there to be proud of health? One day when I grow old, I'll become sick. Then again he thought, now I have life, but what is there to be proud of life? One day life also will slip away from me. So only somebody with wisdom can think like that. But most people in the world, we are very vain of our body, very vain of our possessions and all that. Don't realize that all these things are impermanent. Sutta number 14, Majjhima Nikaya, Chula Dukkha Kanda Sutta, the shorter discourse on the mass of suffering. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living in the Sakyan country at Kapilavatu in Nigroda's park. Then Mahanama, the Sakyan, went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, he sat down at one side and said, Venerable Sir, I have long understood the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One thus. Greed is an imperfection that defiles the mind. Hatred is an imperfection that defiles the mind. Delusion is an imperfection that defiles the mind. Yet while I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One thus, at times states of greed, hatred and delusion invade my mind and remain. I have wondered, Venerable Sir, what state is still unabandoned by me internally, owing to which at times these states of greed, hatred and delusion invade my mind and remain. Stop here for a moment. This Mahanama is a relative of the Buddha, I think something like his cousin or something, and the Sakyan. So one day when the Buddha was in his hometown, I think of Kapilavatu, and Mahanama came and asked him, said that he has long understood the Dhamma, understood that greed, hatred and delusion are defilements, and yet sometimes this greed, hatred and delusion invade the mind and remain. So he's wondering what has not been abandoned by him yet. Then the Buddha said, Mahanama, there is still a state unabandoned by you internally, owing to which at times states of greed, hatred and delusion invade your mind and remain. For were that state already abandoned by you internally, you would not be living the home life, you would not be enjoying sensual pleasures. It is because that state is unabandoned by you internally that you are living the home life and enjoying sensual pleasures. Even though a noble disciple has seen clearly as it actually is, with proper wisdom, how sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering and much despair, and how great is the danger in them. As long as he still does not attain to the delight and pleasure that are apart from sensual pleasures, apart from unwholesome states, or to something more peaceful than that, he may still be attracted to sensual pleasures. But when a noble disciple has seen clearly as it actually is, with proper wisdom, how sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering and much despair, and how great is the danger in them, and he attains to the delight and pleasure that are apart from sensual pleasures, apart from unwholesome states, or to something more peaceful than that, then he is no longer attracted to sensual pleasures. Let's stop here for a moment. These few words by the Buddha are very important. The Buddha told Mahanama that even Aryan disciple, he has the wisdom to see that sensual pleasures are very dangerous and the source of much suffering. Yet he will still be attracted to, he may still be attracted to sensual pleasures unless he can attain the delight and pleasure, piti and sukha, apart from sensual pleasures, apart from unwholesome states. This refers to the first jhana. When a person attains the first jhana, he attains piti and sukha, which are apart from sensual pleasures and apart from unwholesome states. And or to something more peaceful than that refers to the higher jhanas. The second jhana, third jhana onwards is something more peaceful than that. So only when a person attains to the jhanas, then he is no longer attracted to sensual pleasures, for the simple reason that jhana, the bliss from jhana, is a higher happiness. Just now, the previous sutta, we talked about the gratification of feelings. The highest satisfaction in feelings is when a person abides in jhana. So when you have already tasted the happiness of jhana, then you can let go of human sensual pleasures. It's just like a person has attained the happiness of a heavenly being, and then he has become a heavenly being. He looks down at the world, the human beings, and even though he sees human beings enjoying sensual pleasures and all that, he does not want to come down to enjoy, right? Because he is enjoying a higher type of happiness in heaven. So in the same way, when a person attains the bliss of jhana, then he is no more attracted to sensual pleasures. So sensual pleasures are coarser type of happiness and not so deep. So here the Buddha is telling Mahanama that if Mahanama had attained that state, he would not be living the whole life. In other words, if a person, a lay person, he has attained jhana, then the Buddha implies here that he's not likely to remain a lay person. He's more likely to renounce, become a monk. Because once a lay person has practiced meditation until he attains jhana, then he has the confidence to go forth, because he knows that he will be happier, at least mentally happier, in robes. So nowadays you find some people think that they have attained great states of jhana, but if they cannot let go of this lay life, then from this sutta you would find that it's not very likely that they have attained. The Buddha continued, "Before my enlightenment, while I was still only an unenlightened bodhisattva, I too clearly saw, as it actually is with proper wisdom, how sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering and much despair, and how great is the danger in them. But as long as I still did not attain to the delight and pleasure that are apart from sensual pleasures, apart from unwholesome states, or to something more peaceful than that, I recognized that I still could be attracted to sensual pleasures. But when I clearly saw, as it actually is with proper wisdom, how sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering and much despair, and how great is the danger in them, and I attain to the delight and pleasure that are apart from sensual pleasures, apart from unwholesome states, or to something more peaceful than that, I recognized that I was no longer attracted to sensual pleasures. And what is the gratification in the case of sensual pleasures? Mahanama, there are these 5 causes of sensual pleasure." And then the Buddha describes the gratification of sensual pleasure as described in the previous sutta. And then after that the Buddha talked about the danger in the case of sensual pleasures. That was already what we went through just now. Now this too is a danger in the case of sensual pleasures, a mass of suffering in the life to come, having sensual pleasures as its cause, sensual pleasures as its source, sensual pleasures as its basis, the cause simply being sensual pleasures. Now Mahanama, on one occasion I was living at Rajagaha on the mountain Vulture Peak. On that occasion a number of Nigantas or Jains were living on the black rock on the slopes of Isigili and were practicing continuous standing, rejecting seats, and were experiencing painful, racking, piercing feelings due to exertion. Stop here for a moment. These Nigantas are also called Jains, and they are these naked ascetics, one type of naked ascetics, and they like to torture themselves. So in this case, they were standing day and night, and because of standing day and night, they were having a lot of pain. Still they continue to stand because they think they want to get rid of their bad karma, pay off their bad their sins. Then when it was evening, I rose from meditation and went to the Nigantas there. I asked them, friends, why do you practice continuous standing, rejecting seats, and experience painful, racking, piercing feelings due to exertion? When this was said, they replied, friend, the Niganta Nataputta is omniscient and all-seeing, and claims to have complete knowledge and vision thus. This Niganta Nataputta is the leader, also known as Mahavira. And he claims, whether I am walking or standing or asleep or awake, knowledge and vision are continuously and uninterruptedly present to me. So he claims that all the time, 24 hours a day, he has knowledge and vision. The Buddha also did not claim that. He says that, Nigantas, you have done evil actions in the past, exhaust them with the performance of piercing austerities. And when you are here and now restrained in body, speech and mind, that is doing no evil actions for the future. So by annihilating with asceticism past actions, and by doing no fresh actions, there will be no consequence in the future. With no consequence in the future, there is the destruction of action, karma. With the destruction of action, there is the destruction of suffering. With the destruction of suffering, there is the destruction of feeling. With the destruction of feeling, all suffering will be exhausted. This is the doctrine we approve of and accept, and we are satisfied with it. When this was said, I told them, but friends, do you know that you existed in the past, and that it is not the case that you did not exist? And they said, no, friend. But friends, do you know that you did evil actions in the past, and did not abstain from them? And they said, no, friend. But friends, do you know that you did such and such evil actions? And they said, no, friend. But friends, do you know that so much suffering has already been exhausted? Or that so much suffering has still to be exhausted? Or that when so much suffering has been exhausted, all suffering will have been exhausted? And they said, no, friend. But friends, do you know what the abandoning of unwholesome states is, and what the cultivation of wholesome states is here and now? And they said, no, friend. And the Buddha said, so friends, it seems that you do not know that you existed in the past, and that it is not the case that you did not exist, or that you did evil actions in the past and did not abstain from them, or that you did such and such evil actions, or that so much suffering has already been exhausted, or that so much suffering has still to be exhausted, or that when so much suffering has been exhausted, all suffering will have been exhausted, or what the abandoning of unwholesome states is, and what the cultivation of wholesome states is here and now. That being so, those who are murderers, bloody-handed evildoers in the world, when they are reborn among human beings, go forth into homelessness as Nigantas. Let's stop here for a moment. So the Buddha said that you all claim to exhaust your bad karma, your bad offenses of the past by torturing yourselves. But the Buddha asked them, do you know that you actually existed in the past? They said they don't know. Do you know that you did evil in the past? They also said they don't know. Do you know you did how much evil? And they said they don't know. Do you know how much evil you have exhausted? They also said don't know. So the Buddha said, since you don't know all these things, you must be previous life, all of you must have been murderers and great criminals. So now all of you have to pay back. That's why you go and torture yourselves as Nikantas. And they said, friend Gotama, pleasure is not to be gained through pleasure. Pleasure is to be gained through pain. For were pleasure to be gained through pleasure, then King Senior Bimbisara of Magadha would gain pleasure. Since he abides in greater pleasure than the Venerable Gotama. Stop here for a moment. This is an ordinary wisdom, ordinary worldling's wisdom. They think that you have to torture yourselves to attain happiness. So you find external ascetics, they do all kinds of austerities, basically to torture themselves. And even nowadays, people still do it. I think it's a little bit more subtle. Like taking vegetarian food is one way of torturing yourself. Another one is like some of these Muslims, they use the whip, they whip themselves. Hindus also, there's some type of Hindus, they whip themselves, torture themselves. And Christians, many hundreds of years ago also, they used to do that, whip themselves, and sometimes the whips they use will draw blood on that. So this is ordinary worldling's way of thinking. So then he said, if pleasure is to be gained through pleasure, then the Magadha's King Bimbisara would get greater pleasure since he is now enjoying himself. He's enjoying more pleasure than the Venerable Gotama. And then the Buddha said, surely the Venerable Nikantas have uttered these words rashly and without reflection. Rather, it is I who ought to be asked, who abides in greater pleasure, King Senior Bimbisara of Magadha, or the Venerable Gotama? So here the Buddha told them, you should ask me first, who is happier, the King Bimbisara or the Venerable Gotama is happier? And then they said, surely friend Gotama, we uttered those words rashly and without reflection, but let that be. Now we ask the Venerable Gotama, who abides in greater pleasure, King Senior Bimbisara of Magadha or the Venerable Gotama? And the Buddha said, then friends, I shall ask you a question in return. Answer it as you like. What do you think, friends? Can King Senior Bimbisara of Magadha abide without moving his body or uttering a word, experiencing the peak of pleasure or happiness for 7 days and 7 nights? And they said, no, friend. Can King Senior Bimbisara of Magadha abide without moving his body or uttering a word, experiencing the peak of pleasure for 6, 5, 4, 3 or 2 days and nights, or for 1 day and night? And they said, no, friend, to each of these. But the Buddha said, but friends, I can abide without moving my body or uttering a word, experiencing the peak of pleasure or happiness for 1 day and night, or 2 days, 3, 4, 5, 6 days and nights, for 7 days and nights. Why do you think, friends? That being so, who dwells in greater pleasure or happiness, King Bimbisara of Magadha or I? And they said, that being so, the Venerable Gotama abides in greater pleasure than King Senior Bimbisara of Magadha. That is what the one said. Mahanama the Sakyan was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. So here the Buddha says that King Bimbisara, he cannot experience unremitting happiness for a few days, but the Buddha said, I can experience the greatest pleasure for 7 days and 7 nights without moving, without uttering a word. Bliss up like high on drugs like that. But even more higher happiness. So that's the end of the sutta. So this sutta, what is the most interesting part is the beginning, where the Buddha says that we can only let go of sensual pleasures in the world when we attain a higher happiness, namely the bliss of jhana. And if a person can attain the bliss of jhana, it is more likely that he would not be living the home life and enjoying sensual pleasures. He would want to renounce and enjoy jhanic pleasures, the pleasure, the happiness in deep meditation. I think we stop here and can discuss anything.
Referring to Mahanama, he's a once returner, I think.
Yeah, that's what the commentary say.
Yeah, or commentary. But that means he doesn't have jhana at all.
He may not have, but from the Sutta it appears that he does not have. But I think it's not for sure that the commentaries are correct. I would think that Mahanama is more likely to be a Sotapanna than a Sakadagamin, because he says greed, hatred and delusion invades his mind. Because for the Sakadagamin, the once returner, greed, hatred and delusion is lessened. So he probably is a Sotapanna.
But just now when you talk about the king, when he tortured the people, so between the soldiers and the king as he gave the instruction to the soldiers to kill the man. So who of between the two, which one creates the bad karma? Is it the king who has the thought, or the soldiers who executed the action?
The Buddha says that karma is intention, right? Karma is intention. So when the king gives the order to execute the man, firstly he has the intention to have that man killed, right? But then we must also know what was his state of mind. If he thought that this man has to be killed to protect everybody else, then for him maybe the karma is not so heavy. But if he thinks I'm all powerful, I want him to be killed, in that case his karma could be more. Okay. Then similarly for the executioner, if the executioner thinks I don't like to kill this man, but then the king orders that I kill him. If I don't kill this man, my head may be chopped off. So he has no choice. He does it a bit unwillingly. Then his karmic offense is not so great. Just like, for example, our mothers used to slaughter the chicken for us to eat. Our mothers, when she slaughters the chicken, she doesn't have the hatred for the chicken. In fact, she pity the chicken. She recite a few verses. When you go to heaven, have a good rebirth and all these things. And then, so the intention is very important. So if the executioner, he does it not so willingly, the karmic offense is not so great. But if he does it with pleasure, then the karmic offense would be very great.
But if I remember, there are various mentions in the suttas whereby there are lay disciples who have very high attainments, and given what you were describing, a situation whereby the lay person has attained jhana, that they go into the homeless life. Is there support in the sutras, or what is the rationale for lay disciples? I think remarkably, who have got who are acknowledged by Buddha himself as having very high attainments.
I couldn't hear very well. Can you repeat what you said?
I'm asking about the difference, different choices of paths, because if I recall, there are lay disciples mentioned in the sutras who have very high attainments. And what you were reading in the sutta implied that the lay disciple, if they had attained jhana, would become a monk, whereas we do have lay disciples that have remained lay disciples and have had very high attainments. So just for some elucidation. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Sometimes when the Buddha makes a certain statement, it is a general truth, but there are exceptions. So in the case of those lay disciples who attain jhana and remain as lay disciples, those are exceptions. There are more of them who, after attaining jhana, renounce. Like generally, lay disciples cannot become arahant. Generally, only monks and nuns become arahant. But there are exceptions. There are sometimes you have some lay person hearing the Buddha's Dhamma and they attain to arahanthood. But after attaining to arahanthood, they will not remain as lay persons. They would definitely go forth.
Earlier past few days we discussed that cemetery is not really an ideal place for meditation. But I do understand that some friends and yogis were asked by teachers to meditate in the cemetery, even though some of them are obviously not seasoned meditation. So just wonder whether it's only applicable for monks who are seeking, who are doing intensive meditation, and it's more appropriate.
From what the Buddha said about the cemetery being an unclean place, that the vibes are no good, that it's not the ideal place to meditate. But somebody who is, for example, very serious about meditation and is a bit advanced, he may want to go to the cemetery. But for beginners, I think it's not advisable at all for beginners to go to the cemetery, because I know some people who have gone and have been very frightened by some things that happen, because some things do happen. And one lady who was at one time a nun, she was asked by the teacher to go and sit in a particular spot in the cemetery, and she didn't realize that she was sitting over a grave. So in the middle of her meditation at night, something came to disturb her, and she was very frightened from that experience. But luckily she didn't go out of her mind. If you have a person with a weaker mind, might go out of the mind. So it's not advisable for beginners to go to such places, dangerous places. Even for monks, it's not advisable, so what more for beginners and especially lay people.
Because I have a friend who was asked to sit in a cemetery to meditate, and I think she imagined that she sees things flying past, and she herself does not have a stomach for foulness. She can't watch the video on the tsunami corpses and all. But I don't think it helps, because I asked her what kind of meditation technique she used when she sits in the grave. She says she still does anapanasati. But one day, if we were going to do that, aren't we supposed to meditate on the foulness of the body if we are sitting at the grave?
If you're sitting on a grave, not necessary that you meditate on the body. You can meditate on anything. In fact, you should meditate on a subject that will give you, that will make your mind concentrated as soon as possible, so that in anything happens, at least your mind is more steady. Okay, shall we end here for tonight?